Joining us right now via Zoom chat is James Baxter. He is the CEO and co-founder of Exodus 90. It's a formation program that aims to bring spiritual exercise and growth to and freedom to men all over the country and beyond. And we're glad to have you on the program this morning, Mr. Baxter. Thank you for your time.
Joe, it's a delight. Thanks for the invite. I must say, in 7 years doing this is my earliest morning radio appearance ever. I've had my cup of coffee. I'm up. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to bring the heat.
The only real question is, have you had your cold shower? That's really the only question of the day.
Oh, man, I knew you were going to ask that, and I got to say, I live in a really tiny house. And when we put the shower on, the kids wake up. So I was like, I got to sneak out. So I'm not going to lie, you caught me. I haven't had it today.
I did Exodus 90 in 2017, and of course, you know, the
early days.
The cold shower was like the penultimate sacrifice for give up chocolate. Okay, I can live through that experience if I had to. You know, coffee or whatever, all these other austerities. Sure, cold showers? Are you out of your mind? That's like, and I did mine. Mine ended on Christmas Day, so it was a bit rough.
Well, I tell you, even starting here in January, where most of our guys start, somewhere, in January to end on Easter Sunday, It's quite cold. And what's funny is people in the South complain about them as much, maybe even more than the guys in the North. And I was on a trip to St. Paul, Minnesota a couple years ago. And I'm from Indiana, which is a little milder. And it was early morning, and I was like, wow, it is freezing. This is next level cold up here, what these guys go through.
Right. Maybe they're always taking cold showers. Maybe that's why they complain. Us Southerners, forget it. Well, let's define terms. Exodus 90. Now, from my understanding, you were in the seminary. You were discerning the priesthood before you discerned out, and this was a part of that experience?
Yeah, the first part of that's true. I was in seminary formation for quite some time, but actually a mentor of mine in a different seminary started what's become known as Exodus 90. And in short, it was just a formation program that he came up with as a solution to a problem. And he was the vice director of human formation there, which is a fancy way of saying he was just really responsible for the human foundation of the men on their way to ordination, really responsible for their character. And what he noticed was, just a lot of idols stand in their way of being the priests that they're called to be for God's people. And so he had a devotion to the Desert Fathers, which is kind of a neglected part of our tradition. And so that kind of infused its way into this. And that's where all this comes from. So in short, after years, of really kind of piloting these groups and many reporting it to be a really life-changing experience, the notes of it were shared with me. And I just tried to figure out how to share it with as many men as I can since then.
It's really interesting because this has become a huge benefit to so many men who are making a life change. And I know me and my buddies are about to start Exodus 90 up in this next week. And the reason why is because I did it 2 or 3 years ago, and my buddies were like, oh, let's do it this year because a number of my buddies are getting married. They just got engaged, and they're like, we want to lose weight. We want to become a better man. We want to get ready for marriage, have more prayer life, get away from all the technology, and it's going to prepare them better for marriage. Can you talk about this idea that we have to shake off some of the malaise that we kind of just put on over time, and how, especially when you're making big decisions, this can be very beneficial?
Yeah, we've seen this time and time again, since we started, how these moments of transition, these moments that are kind of calling out for more from us, like sacraments, become opportunities to really enter into spiritual exercise beforehand. And that's been a really something I didn't necessarily expect at the start, but something I've been really blessed by since. And I think in a particular way, entering into marriage, Exodus has a way of humbling you. It's easy to start because it's hard and it's a challenge, and, you want to see if you can do it. But, from the very first days, you really try to reorient that desire to really, this is about opening yourself up to grace. This is about coming into greater dependence upon God. This isn't about proving anything to yourself, actually. This is about meeting him. And I think, guys will regularly say, I came in knowing I had these struggles, but I actually had no idea about these other things. And that's a very humbling experience. And I think especially when you enter into marriage, if you think you've got it all together, just wait. Your marriage is going to show you don't, and it's going to show you that very quickly.
Have you been talking to my wife? Has she been telling you stories?
I was going to say, I've been there.
But that humility is a foundation then for the gift of self, where pride is really not.
I have a question here. So one of the many obstacles to spiritual growth for men, I think, is not having a great support group, people to journey alongside with. How does Exodus 90 factor this in, and what sort of success have you seen with the program?
Yes, so the fraternal piece of Exodus is essential. We are not in the business of self-help work. And for guys that cannot find fraternities on their way in, and sometimes it can be challenging, we really just encourage them to wait until the time is right. Wait till, the Lord places those men in your life. And the reason for that is because, a fraternity of other men has a way of just doing two things for you. One, being extremely encouraging when you're struggling. And you do struggle through Exodus. And you need kind of the mercy and the perspective of other people to keep you grounded. But the other thing is you also need to be accountable. And kind of when we look at, many of the situations in the church today, especially the scandals of the last couple decades, there's just a lack of accountability. There's people not living in the light, and that darkness just grows and grows out of control over time. And Exodus fraternities are really a chance, if you're open to it and if you're humble enough, to have a space in your life where you can't get away with anything. And for those of us that really want to live in the truth and want to become the best men that we can be, that's actually very freeing. So that encouragement, that accountability, those things come from fraternity. And when you don't have it, it's just, I just don't think you have the structure you need to be the best man that you can be.
We're talking with James Baxter, CEO and co-founder of Exodus 90. We have just a few seconds before we go to break. Maybe we just should do this. What's the website?
Exodus90.com. Exodus90.com is where you can learn all about what we're talking about today. Yeah.
Is it too late for someone to get started or create their own group?
Never too late. Yeah, it starts, so our biggest time of the year, our start date here is in a couple days, January 17th on Monday, to journey through Lent to end on Easter Sunday. If you can't make it in time, we got guys that start all the time, frankly.
Exodus90.com. Don't go anywhere. I want to ask about, we were joking a little bit at the beginning of our conversation about the cold showers thing, but maybe you can tell us about some of the austerities that are part of the program. What are you asking men to do during these 90 days?
Yeah, so asceticism is kind of the tradition we're representing here. And unfortunately, it makes Exodus unique. I don't think that's a great thing, just kind of for as a sign of the time, I guess. When you look at the tradition of the church, you're going to look at the catechism, you look at the lives of the saints, asceticism is all over it. I'm not sure about you. I've never read a saint story that ended and they lived comfortably ever after and did whatever they wanted. That's just not how it works. So asceticism is a big part of Exodus. And so really what it does is it kind of like removes a lot of the distractions and frankly, the idols that can get in the way of a lot of men today, and so the idea is that you can say no to these lower things so that you can say yes to the higher, to the spiritual things, and also to your vocation. Most of our guys are married, so that's as a husband and as a father. Few percent of our guys are priests and religious, and that's different, obviously, for them. So that's really kind of how we look at asceticism. So during Exodus, we've talked about the cold showers. We encourage guys to exercise regularly. We encourage them to sleep when their children allow for, things such as that. You make some different kind of fasts, if you will, media fasts around technology, and really we just try to not to abandon it, but just return technology to a tool, which is, I think, a really kind of lost concept for people who are just used to kind of wasting their lives on these things that could have value if we just use them the right way. There's a number of food kind of constraints as well. We don't eat between meals. We don't have sweets. We fast on Wednesdays and Fridays. So those are kind of some of the core elements. We abstain from alcohol as well as a part of that. And then on Wednesdays and Fridays, we also kind of practice the same moderate fast that the church asks of us on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. But during Exodus 90, you make those fasts on every Wednesday and every Friday of the experience.
One thing that we talked on Monday with someone to talk about the book, The Dumbest Generation. It was on the topic of technology and this generation that grew up with technology, how they didn't didn't learn how to think, didn't learn how to read. They can't do certain things that we think of as normal activities. And one thing that I really like about Exodus 90 is the idea that we are doing a technology fast, getting rid of social media, getting rid of useless time on the internet, these kind of ideas. So I would like you to comment on that a little bit, but also, and I bought the Exodus 90 book way back when, and so we use that, but now y'all have an app. Is there any way you can do Exodus 90 without using an app? Is the book still available? Is there a way to do it where we can just go full technology fast? Because I'm at the point where I'm going to just take a sledgehammer to my phone.
Yeah. So yes, you can. So just go to our Exodus 90 shop, and you can just search book, and you can, kind of have that tech-free kind of 90-day experience. But one of the things, we made a call. This was actually 2018, 4 years ago now. We just kind of observed, like, guys are checking in with their anchor. So within an Exodus fraternity, you meet with a group every week of 4 to 6 men, and then you also have an anchor in that fraternity that you check in with on a daily basis. And basically the feedback from the guys was like, hey, it's awesome to have some of these restraints. It would be really great to have a separate, non-distracting place to contact and communicate with the men of my fraternity. So that became kind of the impetus for why we ended up building our own app. And, it might seem like a little bit of a contradiction in terms, but actually when you design things from first principles, and primarily the thing I would just say is like closed systems, you can accomplish the outcomes you want to. And we actually see this in the use of our app, how much kind of guys come into Exodus struggling with technology, and then by the end, how that just shatters through the process, even using our application. And so I just kind of make a note there that yes, you can have a tech-free experience. Most of us, maybe because of our work, can't just go to the desert, if you will. And that's why we built it.
Yeah, it's funny. I was asked just the other day if I would join another Exodus 90 group, and I'm thinking there's no possibility I could fast from media. I mean, I'm already up at 3 a.m. 5 days a week. I already fast 2 days out of the week, So, I mean, it can be hard for some guys. But one of the questions in my mind is, what is the number one piece of feedback you receive from men, and now that you've done this now for several years, about what's the hardest aspect of your program?
Yeah, so I had a lot of thoughts about that at the beginning. And frankly, over time, I've just learned that every guy is different, and the struggles and the graces are as different as the men. And I think that's one of the things that's so interesting about Exodus is the structure is the same. And we really encourage guys to take it as it is, as it was intended. And the benefit that men experience is so different, but also kind of what they can struggle with. So some guys are always talking cold showers. Other guys aren't used to fasting. But for others, they don't have a habit of daily prayer. And actually, one of the things you can think when you look at something like Exodus is, oh, this is for the guys that are really practicing the faith. And it's actually not true. I mean, most of our guys are not in the habit of daily prayer, before Exodus 90. And there's a good swath that are not fully practicing the sacraments. And that's really interesting for us from an evangelization standpoint. But so I would just say, in terms of the struggle, that spending that hour with God and at least 20 minutes in silent prayer, at silent dialogue with him, which we do our best to, prepare them in for, and then kind of lead them into every morning. It can be a challenge if you're not, you don't have that habit. But I think one of the things that's so rewarding is guys are struck by the presence of God, how vocal he can be when you make that space for him consistently. He can absolutely shape your mind, your will. He can change you. But we need to set that frame, and we need to give him that space to let us grow.
This is probably a question you get constantly, but the question that we hear over and over again is Exodus 90 just for men? And the question becomes, and whenever people ask me, whenever I tell about, hey, I'm about to do Exodus 90, they're like, oh, is this something women can do? I'm like, let men have something. And so is Exodus 90 just for men? And what would you say to women who say, we want to do something like that?
Yeah, Exodus 90 is just for men. And, it's not like this machismo on the other side of that. It's just trying to be true to what this was at the beginning, how it's been designed, and, where we're at today. And I think the way that we look at our work at Exodus is when we form fathers, when we form husbands and fathers and future husbands and fathers, we're providing these women with a better man than they otherwise would have had. And the truth is, even taking a further step back, fathers are the single greatest predictive factor on whether or not a child will practice the faith as an adult. And it's not even close. And so, just as a stat, a mother that practices faith in a household where the father does not, there's a 2% chance that kid is going to, any children in that family are going to practice the faith. And yet, when the fathers practice the faith, almost regardless of the faithfulness of the mother, 2/3 to 3/4, that's 66 to 75% of those kids are going to practice the faith, which is just alarming. I'll never forget when I first read that. It's like, this can't be right. And so the way that we look at it is like, hey, by forming men in the faith, we're actually giving you a better version of the husband, probably the husband you thought you were marrying, but also we're making a dent in the future of the church. I would say I'm so kind of resolute about this because we did make a discernment actually with one of the most prominent and flourishing women's religious orders. And we just asked them to make this discernment with us, about this because we would get the questions so often. And what came back was, number one, they just really thought the Holy Spirit was on Exodus for men. And I was really humbled by that. But number two, it was like they just didn't believe it was a model that would be as beneficial for women. And I've just kind of followed their maternal spirituality and genius in that decision.
We have just a few minutes left in our conversation with James Baxter, CEO of Exodus 90. James, can you offer some best practices or strategies? What's the best way for a guy to successfully navigate these 90 days?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is just have a disposition of openness and humility. If you're going into it with, trying to prove a lot to yourself or to others or whatever, it's just, that's not the place to start. You really got to come at this from a good spiritual intention. Our desire in growing in freedom is not to just do whatever we want, whenever we want, with whoever we want, for how long we want. Like, that's the world's view. Our view of freedom is actually just being free and being disposed for the love of God and for where he's calling you. So I think that kind of humble, open element will really make this 90 days a powerful experience. And then I think the other thing is to just not succumb to discouragement. The bar is high in Exodus. No one's perfect, and that's not the point. But the whole goal is that hopefully we're building some habits that are not a finish line at day 91, but really a starting line where you're more committed to prayer, the ascetic life, and being accountable to a fraternity. So have a long-term vision for this. Don't look at day 91 as a time for candy and hula hoops or whatever you would want to do. It's just, this is the start of hopefully, a fuller faith life into the future.
I think I remember when it came to the cold showers, the first few I just jumped straight into the freezing temperatures and grinned and bared it. But I think after maybe day 3 or 4, I was like, okay, I'm going to start with a lukewarm, get in, and then crank it down to colder. At least it's a little less shocking in the process.
So the other pro tip is just to shower less per week. I don't recommend that one.
It's a good thing this isn't smell-o-vision. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah, well, there you go. Praise be to God. We are very grateful for your time today. And again, what's the best way for people to get connected? Should they look for a group or should they contact you to try to establish a group? What's the best way?
Yeah, check out exodus90.com to just learn more all about the process, all these things we've talked about today. We are very soon, probably over the weekend, launching a feature where you're going to be able to find other guys in your area that are looking for fraternities.
That's neat.
We've been working on this actively for years, to be honest with you. And we'll be rolling it out over the weekend or in the early days of Exodus this year. So stay tuned for that if you're looking for a group. But I would just encourage you first, if you're interested, to invite the men in your life. The men, in your family, at the parish, in the workplace. Men who are maybe in need of something like this and looking for a new direction.
All right, James Baxter, thank you for your time today. God love you. God bless you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Joe. You too.
Spread the word, Exodus 90, to a guy near you. That would be amazing. But if you